Salutations, everyone, and welcome to the AOE Podcast number 11. And today we're going to be talking about movies. I think I'll release this on Oscar Sunday, and I'm not here to give like Oscar predictions or things like that. Like that stuff is like really easy. Just look at, who won all the awards thus far and who plays a character that has the most strife, who hot button issues and stuff like that, realistic portrayals of real people, historical figures. That stuff's kind of easy. Obviously, I haven't seen, every movie this year. I think this is actually the least amount of movies I've seen in a year in a decade. Yeah, in a decade. I only saw 24 movies this past year. I still understand that, that's more than most people. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see, as always, as many movies as I wanted, especially some of the ones that have been nominated. Those that just didn't come out, in big markets. Like, for instance, I wanted to see Lady Bird. I really like Saoirse Ronan, but didn't get to see it. Also didn't see Get Out, didn't see Darkest Hour. Call Me By Your Name was never anywhere. I didn't see The Fandom Thread. I don't think I would want to because I don't need to see another Oscar get won by that dude. But actually, he's not the favorite this time. Mr. What's his name? Daniel Day-Lewis. That's right. So I'm going to talk about the movies that I saw this year. Obviously, I'm one of those people that does watch the Oscars. I know it's super popular to, I don't care about awards. Oh, these awards are useless. The people that tend to say that are always the ones that get the most worked up about it. Like, I can't believe this wasn't nominated or this didn't win. It's like, I think you doth protest too much. But there was, a decent amount of good movies this year. I felt that it was maybe, because taking up the look at the slate of this year, it looked like this was going to be a baller year for movies. And I think it underperformed just a little bit. But then again, I didn't get to see as many movies as I wanted to see. Usually I see around 52, and this is, half that. 26. I saw 26 movies. I think I said 24 earlier, so no. So, that's a movie every 2 weeks as opposed to my usual, movie a week, speed. So I have a listing of all of my movies in order. And we'll just go from the bottom, work our way to the top. So the worst movie I saw this year, it wasn't the Emoji Movie. I don't put myself through that. I tend not to go after watching bad movies. I'll usually see a movie that I think is going to be good or, has an actor that I like or actress or animation studio or, if it's a superhero movie, I'm probably going to see it. I saw both of the Ghost Rider movies and those weren't fantastic, but, I just got to. So the 26th best movie that I saw this year was The Circle. Unfortunately, a waste of a very good cast of John Boyega, Emma Watson, Tom Hanks, amongst, other people. But it wasn't a terrible movie. I would definitely give it a thumbs down. This movie is definitely a victim of its time, because if you saw The Circle, you're like, all right, it seems like someone tried to make some weird sociological horror story in modern times. But when this book was written, like 10, 12, maybe 15 years ago, it was way ahead of its time. I mean, not as ahead of its time as maybe the author thought, because things caught up real quick. But when it comes to live streaming and surveillance and Facebook and things like that, which, The Circle kind of emulates, but The Circle's like Facebook plus Apple plus Google and then multiply it times 10, times Disney or some shit. So it's unfortunately like more relevant now. And that kind of takes away the prestige. That's like, if the Truman Show came out, in 2004 when, reality shows were everywhere, where, this movie is just kind of, just one step above what we already see. Not that, The Circle was a Truman Show. Truman Show is a freaking classical masterpiece. But it didn't help that times kind of caught up with the technology that was, during the writing of the novel, definitely forward thinking and a little bit ahead of its time. But it kind of it fell flat. The ending was super wah wah. And I mean, I love Emma Watson. I'll see any movie she's in. I saw freaking Tales of Despero, which is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, just because she voiced the princess in it, and my friend and I wanted to see a movie, and we thought, animated kids film, how can you go wrong? You can. And Tom Hanks, Tom Boyega, they played their roles to the best of their abilities. It wasn't the best script, and just kind of fell flat. So wasn't terrible, but little bit of a stinker. It's the worst movie I saw this year. Number 25, Baywatch. I thought I would enjoy this movie a little bit more than I did. I don't think it was a terrible movie. I wasn't demanding a refund for my ticket or anything. It had a couple of good laughs. Obviously some of the really good ones are used in the trailer. It was a little, as far as character development goes, it was a little better than I expected, but also way too tropey, and the Rock character just kind of plummeted off. His character arc started all right, and then it was just kind of wah, wah, wah. And the rest of the cast kind of had to carry it through the story. And, it's run-of-the-mill, what you would expect from a Baywatch movie, as far as, the action and lifeguards and smoking hot women. They did a good job with that, at least. And some of the explosions were nice and big, and you had some silly stuff, some relatively believable situations as far as an action comedy goes. But overall, it was just okay, not something I would watch again, in other words. And my 24th best movie, my third least favorite movie that I saw this year, this one's not going to be agreed upon by a lot of you. And it's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, I liked the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and I didn't think this was a bad movie. I didn't think it was as good as the first. I think it did almost none of the good things that the first film did, as far as, comedy and characters and action and plot. I hated the plot. I hated the plot of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. They traded the rights, Marvel traded the rights to Fox to change teenage mega warhead Sonic, the girl from Deadpool. They allowed Fox to change that character's powers in exchange for getting the rights to Ego, the living planet from Fox, who had the rights to that character. So they kind of made that trade. Deadpool people, they just wanted that character because they thought she had a cool name, and they gave her completely different powers. And so that was the trade. So we knew that Star-Lord's dad was going to be at the crux of this film, with the way that the first film ended. And they didn't go the Adam Warlock route. Obviously, they teased Adam Warlock there at the very end. And they the whole Ego thing, which was kind of weird, but it's a comic book movie. They explained it well enough. I'm on board with it. But just Ego's motives, the way he goes about things, the movie's super slow. Baby Groot was way more annoying than he was charming. And obviously we know now that's not Groot just regrowing like he does in the comics. This is Groot actually died at the end of the first film, and this is his son, which is why he acts so of his age, which definitely explains the movie a lot more. So, good on James Gunn for doing that. Apparently he thought everybody knew, but, it was a bit of a bombshell for us. We just assumed it's like how Groot is in the comics, where he just regrows. He's kind of an undying creature in that sense. Obviously, in the comics, he started as Groot from Planet X and was a villain. And, Guardians in the Galaxy took a bunch of rejected comic book characters and made their own. But there were some laughs. Drax was pretty good. Rocket was all right. But then the tension between Rocket and Star-Lord, I wasn't buying. And just too many jokes on Mantis and why is she there? And it's help Ego go to sleep. That's weird. He's been living for centuries upon millennia, upon billions of years. It's just a weird plot that just didn't mesh well. Too many plot holes, and just slowed down a lot. and it's some good moments. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all. That was great. But overall, one of the lesser Marvel films, I think. And number 23, I have Cars 3. Definitely better than Cars 2, which I haven't seen, but I think I can still safely say that. That's the only Pixar movie I haven't seen, but apparently you don't need to see it, and I can definitely see why from what I have seen of the film. But Cars 3, I thought was, I think it was better than Cars 1, actually. It was unfortunately, it was super duper predictable, which you can say that about a lot of kids movies and even Pixar ones, but this one was just too formulaic. It's like they tell you at the beginning of the movie exactly what's going to happen, and then it all pans that out without any surprises, without, the heartfelt moments that we know. But they make $1 billion every time they make a Cars movie, and they got that Cars landing in Disneyland that's pretty nice that they want to keep appearances with. So that's going to be a big franchise forever because they sell so much money to 4-year-olds when it comes to the toys. So they're going to make more and more movies. But overall, it was all right. Even by Pixar standards, it was just okay. But there were just better movies out there, and the fact that this one was the story structure wasn't all that great. And at number 22 is Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Men Tell No Tales. I've seen every Pirates movie, so this is the 5th one, and I like them all right. I definitely enjoyed the second Pirates movie way more than anybody else did at the time. I forget, is that one At World's End, or is that the one the third one? I don't remember. And then there was the whole the Fountain of Youth thing and the Jack Sparrow spinoff. But this one was all right in the characters that they had, but it also seemed like they were just trying to rehash the first film a little bit with having the young guy and the young girl. And, Jack is down on his luck, and it doesn't make sense that he trades the compass, and that sets the whole thing off. And they had a couple of good actors in there, having what's his face as Captain Salazar, or what was his name? It was his first name Salazar. I forget now, but it was all right. CG was decent. The story was ludicrously all over the place. Doesn't make sense, but it was okay. It was a Pirates movie. I mean, what do you expect? You're not going to expect much, but it was all right. It could have been worse. Could have been way worse. It was better than the Fountain of Youth one, and I think it might have been better than the third Pirates as well. And just kind of tied everything in together. And then the thing at the end makes no sense that Davy Jones is back. What are you guys doing? What are you doing? This isn't Marvel. Stop trying. I know they've had it end credits in every single movie. Actually, I think they're the first franchise to ever do that, because at the end of the Black Pearls, that scene with the dog, I think that's the first franchise to always have something at the end of the movie. People think Marvel started it. No, it was Disney's other property based off of a really fun ride at their theme park. Number 21, I have Power Rangers. Grew up, super Power Rangers fan. Got the clothes, the toys, all the things. Got the Pogs from McDonald's. So, I knew this wasn't going to be a faithful recreation. It wasn't going to be as cheesy. It was still going to be cheesy. It was going to throw some teenage angst into there. And some of the changes were kind of nice, actually, with some of the characters. The way that they had them, meet up and mesh together. They weren't a group of friends, which was a different take. And, they're outcasts, or, it's, the whole Breakfast Club amalgamation of different kinds of people meeting together under an extraneous circumstance was okay, actually. They definitely could have done worse. It doesn't make sense how you're supposed to sympathize with the Kimberly character, because she was the one that she did the bad thing, and then we're supposed to sympathize with her just because people are mad at her. That was weird. But Billy was fine. Jason was kind of like a typical teenager. Seeing Zordon being played by Bryan Cranston was pretty cool, because he got some work with Saban doing some voice work for some of the monsters back in the original Mighty Morphin days. So big props to him for going back to his roots. But the costumes were all right. It took way too long to get going, which is one of the things that superhero origin stories can do. I think a lot of movies have done it fairly well, whether they skip it, or they just, really string it out. This one just took way too long of like training and cohesion, and Rita, what was she doing? All the Krispy Kremes, Goldar was lame, kind of like the same problems that the first Power Rangers movies had, where like just the CG of the Zords and the fight at the end was just bad. It's what happens when a property for kids comes to the movie screen. Everything gets like really oddly like dark CG'd, like everything's like darker colors and everything's trying to look more quote unquote realistic, and it didn't really work. But there was some nice, nods and Easter eggs, and it was okay enough. I know they teased Tommy Oliver, at the end. Don't know if we'll be getting a sequel. Don't know really how well it did, but it could happen, and I might see it because the first one was good enough and not as laughable as I think most people thought, even though it wasn't that great. At 20, I have the Ghost in the Shell live action movie. Ghost in the Shell is my favorite anime movie and anime series of all time. So I knew that, especially with the history of anime getting the American live action treatment or even Japanese live action treatment, those almost never go well as well. My hopes weren't super duper high, but I wanted it so bad, and I knew that Kuze was the villain, but it wasn't like the same Kuze, and it was an okay movie, but it was a bad Ghost in the Shell adaptation. All of the great standout things from the actual animated film, they fucked up in letting the film breathe, in the character interactions, in the environment. People go way overboard with, the Neo Tokyo giant hologram things, and Blade Runner did a little bit of that as well, but they always just go way too over the top with those things. It's like, see what made the original good and try to replicate that. Not necessarily go for the shot-for-shot remake, even though, Beauty and the Beast did that and it was all right. Not as good as the original, but that's fine. We'll get to that one later. But as a movie on its own, it was actually okay. Story-wise, acting-wise, action-wise. One of the best, if not the best, live-action anime that America has done. But as an adaptation, it was bad. Okay movie, but just swapping around with the villain, they could have made it a lot better. All they're doing is kind of winking at us with the similar shots, similar settings, and it didn't meld as well, and it didn't tell a story with a lot more time. This was longer than the animated, and they still were able to tell us less of a story. So it was okay, like as a movie by itself, but if Ghost in the Shell, it's still gonna just piss you off because it could have been better. It could have been a lot better. Obviously, you can say that about a live action anime adaptation, but this one had a lot more going for it. With, they could have. Bato was okay. Togusa was basically not in the movie. There were so many important lines of dialogue that they should have just taken from the original and put it in there. And having a lot of sequences out of order just to give us the satisfaction of having similar-ish scenes just didn't meld well. But I can't say it's the worst of the worst. It was an okay movie, but Ghost in the Shell deserved better. At number 19, I have the Lego Batman movie. Easily, like, the best start of a film of the year. The first, 10 minutes was so fucking funny. All the shout outs to all of the Batman things. Like, you really have to be a Batman fan to really appreciate that opening. And it was pretty good. What they did with Robin, kids are going to love it. Some of the adults are going to roll their eyes. Obviously, especially if you're a big Robin fan, because they went with this completely different take, which you totally understand for a Lego movie. But as the Lego movies go, I think this is the weakest. I think I'm in the minority in that aspect, but it had some funny moments, a really shitty ending, in my opinion, but your options are kind of limited with a family-friendly Lego movie where the Joker's the villain and all the rules are kind of out the window. You understand that. You definitely understand that. But it is just kind of weird, kind of funny, and a little underwhelming. Number 18, I have Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Definitely not as good as the original. The antagonist's motives, way of facilitating what she's doing was okay, on par, very similar, in level of threat to what the first movie had. Obviously, wasn't nearly as much. As far as like bringing characters back, whether they be good guys or bad guys, that was kind of mixed. The Statesman, I don't know, they kind of played their hands a little early there, or showed their hand a little early there. And action wasn't as good, but what are you going to do? You can't replicate what the original did because this is the sequel. You're not going to have the same sort of gravitas, even though they try to put nods to a lot of the other big scenes from the first film. But that's kind of what you get with sequels, and this was kind of just the run-of-the-mill sequel of originally pretty darn good action movie. So that's all I have to say about that. At number 17, I have the My Little Pony, the movie. It was pretty good. It was definitely better than any of the Equestria Girls, straight to DVD or straight to Netflix movies that they had, which was, to be expected. We waited a long time to get an actual My Little Pony movie. The animation was pretty nice. There was a couple of really funny moments. The story, what you expect, kind of like really any of the villains at the start of any season. That's a two-parter. Very similar in, the threat and how it's overcome. Obviously, this is, a feature-length film. And we get to see most of the ponies shine in what they do, but overall, there are better episodes of the show than the movie. And obviously, they try to throw in as many famous people doing voices as possible so they can put it in the trailers and have them on the late night talk shows. Even though I don't think I saw any of that, I didn't see like Kristen Chenoweth or Michael Pena on like the late night or anything like that. But it was all right. I can't really complain. It's what I expected as an MLP fan for a pony movie. And I was overall just glad that it happened, but still just kind of okay. At number 16, I have Atomic Blonde. I realize a lot of people would have this higher on their list. They definitely... I feel like I still haven't decided if they're trying to trick you throughout this movie or if you're supposed to know the whole time about, the double agent and like what's going on. Some of the action sequences were like hyper realistic with, people losing stamina and, the blood and having to reload. And like, I really appreciate that sort of authenticity that you don't see even from some of the best action movies or spy movies or things like that. The setting is definitely very played out, especially recently, Cold War times. I'm totally punch drunk on that setting, especially with spies involved. But what are you gonna do? People were saying this is the female John Wick. Action scenes weren't as nice. They were definitely different. They weren't as over the top. Again, not a movie I would see a second time. It was just kind of, all right. What's next? And next, number 15 is Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. Obviously, nothing pretty much at all to do with the original movie. And they get the board game, whatever. And then it changes into a video game because otherwise no one will play it because it's, this is, the year 2000, whatever. I forget when it's set. And I think it's present day. And so no one's going to play me. I need to facilitate my destiny by, killing people and making havoc happen and all kinds of shit. So it changes into an Atari 2600 cartridge, which doesn't make sense because that kid whose room that the Jumanji board was in didn't have an Atari 2600. He was playing like PlayStation. It's like it should have changed to a disc. But obviously it finds its way. Pretty funny. The Rock is great. Kevin Hart, funny. Better written than I expected. The character interactions were not as cliche as you would have expected from a family-friendly romp in the jungle. And, some of the good video game aspects were tropish, which is kind of a good thing because make it authentic, right? And overall, it did kind of slag along there at the end a little bit, but it was fine. It was fine. Some humorous moments. And like the best part of it was just the interactions of the kids in the adult bodies that they had with each other. It was actually really good character development for like all of them. It was actually really good in that aspect, which was definitely surprising and a bit of fresh air. And you kind of got to see the kids grow, which they would have to in this circumstance. Obviously, it didn't last very long, in real time, but it was still pretty good. And yeah, who doesn't like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? At number 14, I have Justice League. Obviously, not what we were hoping for. Of course, DC rushed their Justice League. I mean, if you want to copy Marvel, then do it right and introduce everybody by themselves before you have them meet up. Don't have one movie with one hero and then like a semi meetup and then the full meetup. It's just, you're doing too much introduction and like you're not making the story that you want to be making, having a compelling villain and having good threats and having the characters work well together, which was super impressive in the first Avengers movie. It was like, wow, they were able to take all of these solo acts and put them into a band, and the band sounded great. The Justice League, not so much. Felt like Cyborg was just there to facilitate the ending to happen. The Flash was no Barry Allen I've ever seen in comics or TV. Completely different, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but didn't do it for me. Superman, I know people, mustache, blah, blah, blah. Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, okay. The movie was just kind of okay, and that's not good enough. The movie needed to be better than okay for what it was. And what DC needs, riding high off of Wonder Woman, and then Justice League, they just clunked it and definitely really performed under expectations. So hopefully, Aquaman and Shazam and Wonder Woman 2 can lift things back up. And we don't know what's going on with the Batfleck film and any sort of Man of Steel 2. So it was just okay, which means it's not as good as it should have been, which is a bummer. At number 13, we have Thor Ragnarok, aka Asgardians of the Galaxy. It definitely suffered a lot from what a lot of superhero movies have gotten the treatment of lately, and that's the executives going, we need to make everything into Guardians of the Galaxy. That's what they did with Suicide Squad. Instead of a David Ayer film, we got this slapstick, schlocky bullshit. Let's put 80s music and people will love it. That didn't work. And when it came to Thor Ragnarok, let's throw the same song we hear in every movie and every TV show and every commercial, but and have a group together, have it be way more comedic than the other two Thor movies. It's the best Thor movie, so they did that right. Introducing new characters was fairly well done. Hela and her whole deal didn't make sense about wanting to leave Asgard, even that's where her power comes from, and promoting this rando dude to be her general. Then he's got M16s. It was fun. It was a fun movie. The best Thor movie. Definitely the most humorous Marvel movie ever by a long shot. I think it puts it definitely goes for more laughs than Guardians 1 or 2 did. Action, decent at times. Obviously, they have to set up a lot for Infinity War, And I mean, it's just crazy that Thor got a trilogy and, the third one was the best. So, that's cool. So, thumbs up. Number 12, I have Beauty and the Beast. It had Emma Watson, had to see it. It was almost shot for shot. They made a lot of really nice changes in explaining things, in the curse and the ages of people, and how everyone in the town got amnesia from forgetting that the castle and everybody inside it existed. So they explained that huge plot hole away. And the setting was pretty nice. Some of the music was, it's not going to stack up to the original, obviously. But they did a fairly good job with, what they had, what they're setting, the actors that they had, did a really good job, I think, with Maurice, the father, and the relationship of the mother and what happened. I thought that was handled very well. I think, this is easily the best Maurice that we've ever seen. Emma Watson as Belle was great, and her chemistry with the Beast was well done, which is not a given in that sort of relationship, especially in live action. I think they did a fairly good job with it, Prince Adam and all that, and all of the dishes, Cogsworth and Lumiere, Mrs. Potts, those were a little underwhelming, but it's a big act to follow with the animated, which is going to be more musical and more comedic, but it was pretty good. I definitely enjoyed it. My favorite live action version of an animated Disney film easily, and I know we're getting a lot more coming up, so I thought it was pretty good. At number 11, I have Coco. This was definitely a Pixar movie. They went for the heartstrings. They went for an interesting story. I don't think it's what a lot of people might have judged it on the face of things. It's in some aspects, it really surprises you in what happens in the story, and in other aspects, it's very what you expect. But the way that it just keeps on changing from I expected this to happen, but not this, but this and not this. It kind of kept you on your toes, and it was told a very, very good story, a very very heartfelt, way more. The characters were way more interesting than you would have expected from the trailers and the recent inconsistencies that Pixar has had. And this is definitely the best showing that they've had in 5 or 6 years, I would say. So very good. The music, the characters, they take some left turns, which is nice and respectable. Although there are some weird implications in that universe, in that it doesn't matter what you do in the real world, as long as you're famous, you'll live forever in the afterlife. That's kind of messed up. But hey, it was a pretty good film. At number 10, I have Lego Ninjago. I know this is way higher than most people would have it on their lists. I thought it was a fucking funny movie. It was easily the funniest movie of the year. I think it's the funniest movie in many years. It had so many great laughs. Maybe not as repeatable as you would like a great comedy to be, where it's just super funny all the time. Some of it might lose some of its luster after the first go round, but I found myself laughing way more than any movie in a long time. It had so many really funny moments, from beginning to end. Really, it didn't really have a slow point. And it's for kids, it's family friendly, it's gonna, have some things that don't make sense, not the greatest plots, and, some kid stuff, but overall it was way better than I thought it was gonna be. I thought, this is gonna be worse than the Lego movie or Lego Batman, and it was better than Lego Batman. It was even funnier than the original Lego movie. I thought it was just super funny. It made me LOL, actually laugh out loud, for more than I can remember happening from a movie. So super funny. I realize I'm in that minority of rating it this high and above the Lego Batman movie, but I enjoyed it. I did. At number 9, I have Battle of the Sexes with Emma Stone and Steve Carell. That story was something that was just kind of made for a movie adaptation with Billie Jean King. And Obviously, they did their best to make it historically accurate, and they did a great job with that. The story structure was really good. You got to see aspects of that story that you weren't going to know back in the day, especially with Billie Jean and her sexuality. That's not something that was advertised at all at the time in real life, in sports or in movies. And so that was really good to see. And, you know, the women's movements in sports, this was a huge boon for that. And the acting was very well done. Steve Carell did a great job, as he always does, in the more dramatic roles, even though this wasn't, you know, so much of a drama. But he's a fantastic actor and is eventually going to get an Oscar one of these days if he keeps playing roles that involve real live sports events, apparently, because, you know, the last one that he did, he got a lot of nominations for. But it was very good. And, you know, it's not very often we get to see a sports movie. Usually there are actually, you know, historically accurate ones, and it's just nice to know that they're still made. Then at number 8, I have Baby Driver, one of the big runaway hits with fans of 2017. A lot of people love to point out like the soundtrack, even though it's like these are older songs that everybody knows, but people go crazy for that shit. It's just not one of the things that I find appealing about a movie, is just hearing old songs. But, you know, the car chase scenes, which is, you know, the bread and butter of this movie, were on point. They were amazing. They were innovative. And the tension of this movie was very, very good as far as, you know, action films go. There are some things that, you know, kind of don't make sense, with Kevin Spacey's character kind of a little all over the place. And what was with that dude at the bank that just had an MP5 in his truck? Like, what was that about? But like the chase scenes were really good. The tension with the Jamie Foxx character, and obviously, you know, he has the relationship, you know, with the waitress, and he was, you know, definitely not, you know, for this line of work, and is trying to get his way out of it, you know, pay his debts. And it was just a really good action film. You know, some of the best car chase scenes that you've ever seen. Super duper innovative, clever, and just tense, really, really tense. And, you know, it was definitely deserved, you know, all those independent film awards that it got and all that buzz, because it was definitely different. Definitely different. At number 7, I know I'm going to get some heat for this, but I don't care. It was Aka Awesome. Pitch Perfect 3. Gonna go down in history as one of the greatest trilogies of all time. Obviously, I'm as sad as anybody else that Chloe didn't become a thing, and they shoehorned this super forced heterosexual bullshit onto Chloe's character, which made no sense. It was like the most forced relationship in movie history. But the characters, the music, the riff off, the performances, it was all really good. The girls interacting with one another, the competition, it was good. Obviously, they threw in a little bit more action drama there, mostly towards the end. But it, you know, having it a little bit of different is nothing, you know, nothing super terrible when the first two movies were so similar, obviously, you know, in different scales of one another. And this was a difference in the competition aspect, you know, the only a cappella group, and, you know, the record deal with DJ Khaled thing on the table was interesting, with Becca's development in her career and her relationship. I mean, this movie could have been put over the top if Chloe happened, and hopefully in the Blu-ray we get to see that kiss that Anna Kendrick made them film, because that's what this movie needed. You know, so a little disappointing in that aspect, but everything else about it was just as good as the first two movies, which is very enjoyable for me. At number 6, I have Wonder Woman. Definitely the movie that DC needed at that time, with the flops of Batman vs. Superman and this huge stinker that was Suicide Squad. They needed to get something out there to get themselves back into the game, and getting Patty Jenkins on board and Gal Gadot. Shoot, I forget the actual. I know the actual pronouncer. I think it's Gadot. People say Godot. Godot is not correct. It's Gadot. I mean, I really didn't have a lot of faith in that casting because she was this, just this Israeli chick that didn't speak a lot of English. That was a minor character in the Fast and the Furious movie one time, and then boom, she becomes Wonder Woman. That is a super hard role to cast for because of what you need, looks wise, stature wise, build wise, and acting. But the fish out of water storyline was played perfectly. Some funny moments and some real good heartfelt connection between her and Steve Trevor. Steve Trevor as a love interest, and it might be because it was a guy. Because the way that they wrote it is the way that love interests need to be in superhero movies, because it's always been a guy superhero and a girl love interest, and it's just so tropish, cliche, nonsense, movie typical fanfare. This was not that. This was definitely way more authentic, and you could feel it at the end, and made Steve Trevor just not some hanger-on. He was part of the story, integral part, and that's what's more female love interests need to be. And what set a really good example there. Obviously, we fall to one of the many pratfalls of comic book movies in that the villain is underwhelming with Ares, but it was okay. The fight at the end was all right. The little band of miscreants that Trevor and Diana, were with was kind of silly, but it was okay with the way that they were building things up, and Themyscira was nice, and her leaving and getting introduced to the real world and feeling the responsibility of being Wonder Woman, of being an Amazonian, and a demigod that she later finds out definitely hits home for her, and she knows that this is something that needs to be done. But then with the end, it sets up for her having to reel back with the loss of Steve. But it was a stand-up triple, as I said. DC needed something to get back into the game, and it wasn't a home run, but I think it was as good as it needed to be, and it was pretty good. Definitely one of the better comic book movies of the past 2 or 3 years, and easily the best female-focused lead role super heroine movie ever. Better than Catwoman and Elektra and Tank Girl and some of the more obscure ones that people don't know are based off of graphic novels. I think this was the best one, and really have high hopes for Wonder Woman 2. Obviously, the DC cinematic universe is a mess right now, but as long as Wonder Woman can be good, that's good to have. And at number 5, the 5th best movie of the year that I saw, to me, was Star Wars The Last Jedi. I did an entire podcast just on this film, so if you want to know my full thoughts about that, talk it over with my dad at length in that podcast. You can take a look at the playlist, but it was, as Luke said, it wasn't going to end the way that I thought. The movie wasn't going to be what I thought. Let the past die, kill it if you have to, and they certainly did that. Not the biggest fan of Rian Johnson and the direction that he did want to take in order to, subvert expectations. That's fine. But, and what he did with Snoke, I'm cool with. What he did with Rey, I'm cool with. What he did with Luke, maybe not what we wanted, but for the story that was built, made perfect sense. And really ended on the darkest note of any Star Wars film, even more so than Empire, which many people were building this up to be. This was going to be the new Empire of Empire of this trilogy, but it ends on the note of we didn't win, we didn't succeed, but we escaped and we are all alone. And that's kind of like such a weird thing to end on. Wasn't big on the Raylo stuff. Porgs are amazing. And the Finn and what's her name? I'm blanking on the Rose. Finn and Rose storyline was weird. As I said, the pacing of the movie is way different than any other Star Wars film, and I felt like that had some problems. But overall, a good film, a good addition to the Star Wars universe. And it might take some people a little bit of time to come around on how they treated Luke or how Snoke ended up to nothing. But I think those were okay. And being a big Star Wars fan, I still did enjoy it. I didn't think it was as good as The Force Awakens. Better than any of the prequels, which I know isn't saying much. But I still thought it was a good film, and I'm psyched for anything Star Wars in the future, whether it's Episode 9 or Solo or whatever they're going to do after those. And at number 4 is going to be a bit of a surprise, certainly was to me, was Sword Art Online Ordinal Scale. Anime movies typically are not very good, whether they're live action or animated. When they're animated, they're usually not canon. They go, over the rails with things. They introduce a new villain that, disappears instantly. But this was a surprise to me on how damn good this movie was. This is one of the best, I think it's the best modern anime film based off of an anime series. They're let's not say this is better than the Studio Ghibli films out there. But it was a surprise on how good it was. What was at stake, they didn't try to rehash old things. Reki Kawahara is amazing in his ability to start a new story and still have it be good, even though it's different to what worked in the past. I know a lot of people do not like the Sword Art Online franchise, or they say, only Ironclad was good. But I've enjoyed everything SAO, whether it be the manga or all of the series, the movie, the games. I enjoy it all. And this was great to me. Seeing one of the great things that I love about the series is Asuna and Kirito's relationship. And that was definitely a cornerstone of this film, and seeing it mature and progress. And that was awesome to see. That's like my favorite canonical ship out there, because of how that relationship feels so real. It's so like anti-movie, where they throw in a bunch of bullshit and it's all about the chase. They're in a relationship and it's growing and it's loving and it's lovely to see. And what's at stake in the movie is different. But you can't always go for death. Death is always going to be the saddest thing, but they went for the second saddest thing possible, and that's memory loss. And they definitely did a great job with this film. Reki Kawahara going to AR with those Ogmas, wasn't too sure about that, but definitely made it work. Having with AG and Yuna and that storyline, it makes sense. It works within the universe of SAO, and I thought it was really, really good. There's really nothing bad that I can say about the film. It works well with what we've seen previously in the series in introducing protagonists and antagonists. It did a great job. Some amazing nods to the actual series. Heartfelt, emotional, good action, drama, and doesn't try to trick you. It doesn't try to surprise you. It's just going to tell you a good story about characters you already know. And what more could you ask for from an anime movie than that? At number 3, I have Logan, my top comic book movie of 2017. And hopes were super duper high for this film because we knew it was going to be different. It was going to be gritty, bloody, rated R, deal with a time of past the X-Men where Professor X is losing it, and Logan has the responsibilities and the government and oh gosh, and the way that they handled X-23 was really good, unique. They found a great actress for her, and it was different than any other comic book movie, and in a good way. It was not based off of, Old Man Logan, definitely, inspired by, and actually Hugh Jackman kind of came up with the idea of having an old Logan, but, the Old Man Logan storyline, they're taking some things from that, but this wasn't an adaptation of a graphic novel storyline or series, but Logan felt to me like the most graphic novel of any comic book or graphic novel movie. It felt more like a graphic novel than the Watchmen movie did, or Superman or Spider-Man or Iron Man or all the mans and the womans, Guardians, everything. It felt so much like a graphic novel in its maturity, in its amount of violence, in the things that it tackles of sacrifice and loss and moving forward. It had some really beautiful scenes and dealt with a different tone than we are used to. And seeing Hugh Jackman do his swan song of Wolverine after doing it for 17 years this was a great note to end on, and the end of that character in Wolverine. So it was very different in every good way possible. Different tone, different story structure. As far as a superhero movie goes, this was like the least superhero one that I think has been out there, but just told in such a great way with the character and his development through his solo movies. Obviously, we're not going to talk about Origins because that was a shit show. I don't think that's canon anymore. I think that's not canon now. Don't quote me on that, but I believe so. And everyone wishes that it wasn't, if it is. But very, very well done. And you can even watch it in black and white, and people are fans of that as well. My second most favorite movie of 2017 was the Oscar nominated, I think it has the most nominations, Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water. It's a movie he's been working on a long time, trying to get that creature's look just right, and it worked out. It was an amazing film, amazingly directed. The screenplay, the script, it was fantastic. It didn't take leaps or bounds or do things at the wrong time. Everything was, it was such a good pace of the film. The setting was great. The set design was fantastic. It pulled you into this world that felt like a book. It really did. I know Logan was like a graphic novel made into a movie better than anything else, even if they're based off a graphic novel or not. This felt like a novel that was adapted into a movie, but it wasn't. It was, which goes to show how great of a screenplay it was. Wonderful casting choices, just really good stuff. Sally Hawkins and Richard Jenkins, they were fantastic. The creature was great, and it was just beautifully told. And the structure of the character's journey, both the antagonist and the protagonist and the ancillary characters, was very well handled. It ended just the way that I think it needed to be. Definitely worked a lot in the time period that it was set in. And obviously science fiction with this creature, but made a lot of sense by putting this fictional creature in this real time and place. Everything flowed so naturally. Like, this is what you would have expected to happen in this instance, where this godlike creature is found, and what the government would do with it and what other governments would try to do to sabotage that. And the Russian spy, what's his name? Michael Stolberg. This dude, everything he's in, he's the the Russian scientist guy. Everything he's in is fantastic, and he's great in everything that he is in. So, it's one of I think him and John Goodman are just some of those actors where it's like if they're in it, it's going to be a good movie. And this was a really good movie, beautifully told, wonderful script, wonderful actors, wonderful setting, wonderful screenplay, wonderfully directed. So good on Guillermo. He deserves every award he gets for this film. It was timely and fantastic. But my number one movie of 2017, and it wasn't that close, was Blade Runner 2049. This movie is fucking amazing, guys. You don't necessarily need to have seen the first movie. You definitely need to know the bullet points of what happened, but it was so good in every way. The characters of Ryan Gosling, his holographic companion AI thing, was like the most human character in the movie, which is a fantastic way to handle things. The relationships of technology and love, and you had Jared Leto's character and his goals make sense, and Harrison Ford and his involvement with everything is really good. I honestly, I will admit, I'm not a big fan of the original Blade Runner. I know it's a little blasphemous. I did see it like 5 or 6 years ago. Don't remember if it was the director's cut or not the director's cut. I know there's a big hullabaloo about that because I think it's like the director's cut is like way better or something. But that movie is held in such high prestige, kind of established the cyberpunk setting, and people really, really love it and hold it in such high regard. I didn't really enjoy the first one, but this one was amazing. The philosophical issues that are brought up, the way that this society runs, the way that technology is involved, it shows such great relationships with the world, with technology, with the replicants and what they have to deal with, and Ryan Gosling's characters struggle with this, and it's wonderfully told. The setting is fantastic. The cyberpunk obviously is going to fit way more in a Blade Runner movie, which established it more so than like Ghost in the Shell, which, that's not really cyberpunky, but they made it cyberpunky because, kids will love this. Let's make it steampunk in the sequel. But it made it work really well. I don't want to spoil anything. And I don't think the movie really tries to hold on to information too long. I think everything is presented to the viewer at the right moments to give the biggest impact. They don't try to trick you. They don't try to surprise you, but they do let you figure things out. And that's kind of like one of the better things about, people will say movies that make you think. I think that's a really weird way to put things. Like, there's not just brain dead movies and then amazing, complicated Oscar-worthy movies. I think those aren't, there's two, extremes that people love to gravitate towards. Something's either a popcorn flick or a movie that makes you think. I don't see movies in that way, but, it doesn't try to go over your head, but it doesn't try to dumb things down for you either, and lets you breathe in the world and the characters, and their relationships with one another are really great. So really good script, fantastic story that I'm glad they waited this long to get it right. And, obviously cool on Harrison Ford for coming back, even though it is quite brief. The commercials don't want to tell you that, but he's not in the movie for a lot. And it could have a sequel. It could have a third Blade Runner movie, but they also could just end it here. So if they do decide to do a third one, I'm super on board, because this was a fantastic movie in every single way, and easily my number one movie of 2017. That's my list for my 26 movies that I saw in somewhat of an order. It fluctuates day to day, week to week, year to year. I'm sure I'll feel differently about some of these films in the future, but I love movies, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about, anything about the Oscars and movies that you saw this year, what you're looking forward to for the rest of 2018. So yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.